Hello and welcome to another episode of It's About Time. I'm your host, Caleb Carter, and this is the show where those much-needed conversations get the platform to be heard. And today is a special episode because one thing about HBCUs is that they have a lot of hidden gems. And today, I talked to one of those hidden gems in the person of my psychology professor, Mr. Barney Williams. And in this episode, we'll be talking a bit about psychology and mental health in the black community, as well as how Mr. Williams got his start here at Prairie View. Stay tuned. It's About Time. Okay.
So do I look straight in the camera there?
No, you can look at me.
Okay.
Come on, we talk. If you ever want to. Hello and welcome back to It's About Time. And today joining me, we have my child psychology professor, Mr. Barney Williams. How are you doing today, Professor?
Good, sir.
Professor Williams, thank you for joining. And before we get started in the actual interview, I want to start with this because I want to always make sure to give people their flowers. I want to let them know that how much they have impacted not only myself but the people here at this campus. And I can truly say that about you. I mean, it didn't take a long time for me to know that you would be one of my favorite professors. The reason being is because that in the subject of psychology, it takes a bit of opening up, and you didn't hesitate to do that. I in one of our talks, I asked you, I say, why do you think the students just felt so open to talk with you within the first few weeks? And then it clicked to me that you yourself were an open book, and that gave them the license to open up themselves. So I really just wanted to give you your flowers in that respect, and thank you just for being the person that you are. But I want to start with this, Professor Williams, because you're here at Prairie View. So tell me a little bit about what brought you to Prairie View, and why psychology to begin with.
Okay. I graduated from Texas Southern University with a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Okay.
And then I moved off to California and did graduate school, a master's and a PhD in clinical psychology. The first thing that my thought was to be a psychologist and have an office and have clients to come into there. But my maker had something different for me.
Okay.
And so in 2006, I came here, I did some adjunct. And then in 2000, for a couple of years, and then 2009, I came back to do some additional adjunct work. And then so the person at the time said, we don't have any part-time positions. And I said, okay. So 2 weeks later, she called me back and she said, there might probably be a full-time position in 2010, January. So that's kind of how I kind of got back here. I would honestly say, if I can say, like you said earlier about that open book, I think part of it is an assignment. And I don't mind talking about, it's been a God-given assignment, because he said, I'm fit to send you to a place where you can mentor black and brown individuals. And I was like, yeah, right. And 12 years later, that's what it's been. I mean, it's been actually mentoring black and brown individuals.
Right. Now, I guess my next question to you would be, now when you graduated from TSU and your time in California, I can imagine that, because even now, mental health has still become a little bit taboo. We don't really talk about it as much, so I can imagine how it was then. So what was it that, interested you in psychology to begin with? Because I know you said you wanted to be a clinical psychologist first.
I think that in undergraduate, I worked at Back then it was called the Texas Department of Corrections. So I worked in a prison, Texas Department of Corrections. And I would see a lot of the black and brown males in the prison, and they talked about things about kind of getting out, getting their lives together, and so forth and so on. But it was interesting because I worked there 7 years, and it was like a revolving door. Some of them would come back, and I think that was one thing that I saw them. But I remember probably when I was in my early 20s, I told my mother, I said, hey, I want to go see a psychologist. And so she kind of like looked at me, but what I give her credit for was she was able to find one.
Okay.
And I think that was my first introduction to actually being in therapy myself. And so I came across this individual, an older gentleman, wise guy, and just really just took his time with me and really just kind of worked with me. And so I think that was really the thing that kind of introduced me and really got me into thinking, like, hey, I can do this.
Right. And that's honestly pretty interesting that you in college said to your mother that, hey, I want to go see a psychologist, because I mean, even now to this day we have full-grown adults who say, let me just handle this on my own rather than, seeking that help, taking that step. But I wanted to get to this because in your class, one thing that you said to our class was that, find yourself a mentor, find yourself somebody in your field who can help, who can be that guiding light, to kind of just help you along the way as you navigate, your career. So my next question to you would be is, because of course it wasn't, easy for you throughout your years. So who was that person for you, and how did they help you?
Well, I'll start off with this. I didn't have one in undergraduate. And
okay.
So, and I think that what I've learned from that is that I made a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell the students who I do mentor, I said, you know what, I wish I had me when I was in school,
right.
But I didn't. And so with that, I'm able to kind of see some of the hesitation that they might have. And then so what I try to do is to make it safe for them to be able to come in and to say, okay, hey, let's just have a conversation.
Right.
And then it starts off as a conversation about, hey, what do you want to do with your career after you graduate from school? What's the relationship like with your parents? Is there a father in this, in the home, or is there an uncle or somebody that you look to? And then I will also ask them, do they have a mentor here? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them will say no. And I think that's kind of how the ball starts rolling there, because then they say, wow, you know what, this wasn't too bad. I mean, I can come in, I can just talk to him about school, I can talk to him about life, and I can just talk to him about my career once I graduate from Prairie View.
Right. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you've been listening to Professor Williams' answers, but this is one of the reasons why you would send your child to an HBCU. I mean, it was told to me, Professor Williams, that by my parents, that when I came to a HBCU, that, my professors would take care of me. And I didn't know what that meant. I mean, what are they going to do? But hearing you, I feel like it should be unfolding for myself and a lot of the audience what exactly that means. But another thing I wanted to get to before the break is that when we had our first conversation, I believe that one thing that stood out to me that you said was that you specifically pulled the young men aside to make sure that they're doing all right in life as well as in school. Why is that? Why is that such an important mission for you?
I think a couple of reasons. So let's take when we look at the nightly news. Mm-hmm. And so say you look at the 10 o'clock news, and then sometime the first couple of stories about black men doing something.
Right.
And so what I want to do, and then I always tell the young man, I said, it's a good thing that you're here, and I want to make sure that you can continue to be here, but also continue to graduate and continue to to be a productive citizen once you leave these grounds of Prairie View. And I think that's what's important to make sure that they have the support that they need, so that they can finish what they've started here at Prairie View.
Right. Now, that's honestly great. And Professor Williams, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I mean, I feel like we have conversations like this all the time. We're just putting it on camera this time. But for those of you watching, we're going to be right back with Professor Williams, and we're going to get into a bit more of his profession of psychology and mental health. Stay right here. This is about time. Still here is Professor Barney Williams. And Professor Williams, I want to get into this because I know you teach multiple classes, but for the class that I have you for, which is child psychology, a question that came to mind is that when we think about our childhood, right, in those formative years, what do you think is it about during that time that affects us as we're adults?
Well, I think a couple of things, but I think one thing that comes to mind is that with our parents, that's the first relationships that we have. And so if we can have a pretty good relationship with them, then we can go out into the world and have good relationships with other people that we meet as far as on that journey. But I think one of the things that I've come to realize is that we all have situations and issues that we deal with within our families, and so some of us do pretty good. Some of our parents, there's no roadmap to how to raise kids, and some parents think that they do a great job, and they realize, when the kid get 18, 19, and 20, it's like they have a lot of issues with it.
Yeah, right.
And so therefore, so some will go to therapy and say, you know what, I had some issues with my parents. My parents didn't listen to me. I tried to talk to my parents, but it was like, do as I say, not, just do as I say, but don't question anything, that I'm saying, because I'm here as a parent and you don't question anything that I say. So, it's those things. I think as a child growing up, I think that there was a lot of things that I experienced, especially, with me growing up. And I think that, again, that's kind of the reason why I probably got into therapy, because there were things that I didn't understand. There were things that my parents, not to take anything from them, but I think that I needed a little bit more.
Right.
And so seeking therapy helped me to understand some of those questions that I just didn't understand, or they couldn't give me answers to at the time.
Right. And when we think about our childhood, and we think about how everybody wasn't raised the same, right? Everybody didn't come from the same background. Everybody doesn't have two parents in the household, especially in our community, sadly. But what can you say to those who grow up, with those broken homes, with the trouble in the house? What can you say to kind of help them along in their journey? What would you recommend the steps that they take in their healing process?
I think that, for some, it's kind of, I think that what I'm seeing now, and I usually ask my class, how many of you have gone to therapy before, either individual therapies or family therapy? And so I think there is more students now are going into therapy, and so it's a lot better than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so they're getting some insight to say, hey, my parents are not perfect, but they begin the process of healing, because there are things that they went through with their parents, and it was hurtful. There might have been some trauma there, and so they can now begin to deal with that and to heal that so that they can move forward. But one thing that I do with my classes is what I always say is that what you want to do is you want to recognize so that you don't repeat it with your kids.
Right.
Because a lot of them will have kids, and then if they don't know that they're harming their kids, they'll do the same thing, with their kids.
Right.
So we want to make sure that doesn't continue to happen.
Right, exactly. And I feel like one of the ways that we stop that from happening is as you continually mention, is going to therapy. And like I mentioned before, that isn't something that we're used to doing. It's still very taboo in our community to go out and seek that help. So what can you say to kind of ease the tension in the room that has been built around therapy?
And I think that what I try to do, you have to bring it to, you have to speak their language. And so speaking their languages, this is not that you're crazy. It's not that you have problems or you're mentally ill. What I speak to them and say, let's look at it this way. You go on a journey, and I'm going to provide you some tools to help you on this journey of life. And so when you take that, when you take the mental health part of it, and you just say, okay, I'm going to provide you some tools that can help you, then they can kind of take that in and say, oh, okay, that's not so bad.
Right. Right. Now, Dr. Williams, I'm gonna be honest for a second. I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate, right? Because obviously, I believe that mental health is an important issue, and it is one that needs to be dealt with properly. But I feel that in recent years we found ourselves kind of using mental health as a scapegoat. The analogy I used to you before, and I'll say it here again, is that, you know, a 30-year-old man, he won't be as physically capable as he was when he was 30 now that he's 70, right? But that doesn't mean that he's unhealthy. So to the same extent that we go through trauma in our childhood, right? That's almost we can almost consider that in a way a part of life, but that doesn't mean that our mental health has depreciated in any sense, right? So what can you say to that about mental health maybe being used as a scapegoat, you know, just to get out of life's hardships?
Well, I think that I think that if say an individual goes to therapy, then hopefully the therapist is equipped and good enough to kind of break it down and explain to them. It's that, you know, there's some things that you've experienced in life, and there's some trauma that you experience in life, and so what I'm here to do is to kind of help you heal that, so that you won't repeat that with your kids or other family members, because one of the things that I'll say is hurt people hurt others.
Right.
You know, and so we don't want to continue to have these bad relationships, and so learn how to have healthy relationships, not with just the person that we're involved with, but also with family members too as well. Mm-hmm. And so just trying to get them to see that yes, it might be difficult at first, but the outcome, if you put into the work, it could be a good outcome.
Right, and I honestly think that's good, because like I say, I do think mental health is a topic that needs to be addressed, but I don't want to slip into the trend where we just use mental health, you know, just to protect ourselves in a way. But Professor Williams, I want to get to this, and we're going to leave on this. One thing when we were in class that you were working towards was having a career fair for the psychology field. Why do you think that was so important? You know, seeing that although we have career fair here at Prairie View, a general career fair, why do you think it was so important to recruit some professional psychologists to come and speak to those majors specifically?
Well, you know, being here for 12 years, I mean, students talk to me. They talk to me all the time, and what I do is I listen. And so when they talk about the career fair, not taking anything from the career fair, but they would always say there's nothing, or it's not for psychology majors. And so what I wanted to do was to let the students know, I hear what you're saying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out and try to pull somebody in so that you can get the experience, you can get internships, or you can get jobs once you graduate, if you choose not to go further as far as getting a graduate degree. And so I just wanted to help them out in that area of saying, okay, hey, there are things that I can do with a psychology degree, just a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Right, and honestly, I keep saying this, but I think that's honestly great to hear, because, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, one thing that you have told me was that, you know, you have friends across the states, California, wherever you may have it. Those parents will say, hey, Professor Williams, I'm going to send my child to you, and I'm going to trust them with you. And I think the way you just spoke just now is one of the many reasons why they have that trust in you. And Professor Williams, it was a pleasure having you on today. I know you were a little bit nervous about coming on today, but I think this was a very productive conversation. I think some of the people in our audience, they gained something today. I know I surely did. Thank you again for coming.
And thanks for having me.
Of course. And this has been another episode of It's About Time. This was Professor Barney Williams, and I am your host, Caleb Carter. Thanks for watching.